So I just wanted to share a few thoughts on the most recent report that the President may have asked Director Comey to essentially drop the Flynn investigation. If true, this is yet another disturbing allegation that the President may have engaged in some interference or obstruction of the investigation. I think we know enough now. There's been enough alleged publicly to want to bring the Director back to testify, ideally in open session, either before our committee or the Judiciary Committee, but he should come back to the Congress and share what he knows in terms of the President's conversations with him on any of the Russia investigation. I also think that we ought to ask for the notes that were taken contemporaneously or shortly after those meetings. And of course, if there are any tapes, as the President alleged, those should also be obtained by the Congress. If necessary, I think we should subpoena them, but hopefully we can obtain any of these materials voluntarily. But on the heels of an allegation that the President himself acknowledged that he brought up in the context of whether the Director would stay on as Director, whether he was a subject of investigation, in the context of reports by the Director or associates of the Director that he was asked essentially for a loyalty test to the President, and now with allegations that the President urged him to essentially drop the investigation of Michael Flynn. Enough is enough. Congress really needs to get to the bottom of this. We did have an opportunity to inquire further about the reports of a discussion within the White House with the Russian foreign minister and Russian ambassador. I don't have much I can share in terms of our discussions on that. I can only say that I remain concerned about allegations that the President shared information with the Russians that was not vetted in advance by our intelligence agencies. It's one thing to do this as a product of interagency thought and deliberation about information that needs to be shared. It's another thing to do it spontaneously, impetuously, or in a way that might endanger sources of information. So I think there's still more for us to learn in terms of whether classified information was shared with the Russians. That was an answer that General McMaster was not willing to give today, and also whether any mitigation steps need to be put in place. And I'm happy to respond to one or two questions.
Why is Congressman Conway not out here with you, and are you getting cooperation from Republicans in scheduling a Comey hearing or requesting documents or tapes?
Ms. Conway and I are working together very well, and I think that he has made every effort, we both are, to run the investigation in a completely nonpartisan fashion. The issues that have come up in connection with Mr. Comey are beyond merely the scope of the intelligence investigation and the Intelligence Committee. I think the Judiciary Committee, both in the House and Senate, also have a deep interest in this. And from my point of view, I'm not being proprietary about this. Of course, I'd love him to come before the Intelligence Committee. But either way, he needs to come back before the Congress and I think share with the public what conversations he had with the President that may bear on whether there was any effort to obstruct the investigation or impede it in any way.
Congressman, in light of these new reports on the conversations between Comey and Trump, do you think the President has credibility to appoint a new FBI director right now?
Well, you know, I think the President has severely undermined his own credibility on anything pertaining to the Russian involvement in our election. With respect to the choice of the new director, I agree completely and wholeheartedly with Lindsey Graham. I think it ought to be a completely apolitical choice. I think the ideal candidate, I'm not speaking to anyone in particular, but I think the ideal profile of a candidate would be someone who is a retired judge or an active judge who's willing to step down from the bench, ideally that has prosecutorial experience in the past, but someone I think that is very consistent with the necessity of true independence in that role. So whether the President is credible on the subject or not, the Senate has a incredible responsibility of making sure that no one is confirmed for that job that we can have absolute confidence will be credible responsibility of making sure that no one is confirmed for that job that we can have absolute confidence will be fully independent. And I'll say this also about why that is so important. There are three primary investigations going on of the Russia issue, one in the House Intelligence Committee, one in the Senate Intelligence Committee, and of course that being done by the FBI. The FBI has far greater reach than any committee in Congress. They have agents around the world. They have resources we don't have. We can't recreate what the FBI can do, nor should we try. We have to run our own investigations, but we do have to make sure that the FBI does its work in a thorough way, in an impartial way, and without any impediment whatsoever.
These kinds of questions would now be a litmus test?
Comey's version of events, and you've asked for Comey to come testify. At some point, do you need President Trump to come testify?
Well, I think we ought to ask the director to come in to testify. I think that ought to be the first step. We ought to ask if there are notes. Notes that are taken around the time of the conversation would be, I think, very powerful evidence of what took place during those conversations. And then I think we follow up from there. Clearly, obviously, if the president was being truthful in the threat to Director Comey that he had tapes or might have tapes, we're going to want to get a hold of those. Thank you.